The content, views, and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the City of Bremerton, BCAT, their officials, or their employees.
If you grew up in this country, chances are you've heard the same phrase more than once. You'll understand when you get older. You don't have a say until you can vote. For generations, these and other well-worn expressions have echoed through households and classrooms, quietly reinforcing the notion that civic voice comes only with age. Whether intentional or not, this rhetoric has followed our young people like a shadow, teaching them that their voices won't matter until they've reached some faraway milestone. This afternoon, I ask you for a moment to consider who could be inspired if we flipped that narrative. What if, instead of reminding children what they can't do yet, we encouraged them not just to get involved, but also taught them all the ways that they can be involved right now? Involved as future voters, involved as community stewards, and involved as civic learners. That's the inspiration behind today's episode. I, Ash Black, am thrilled to announce that I am taking my first steps towards building a program in our local schools that is designed to teach the foundations of civic participation long before that first trip to the ballot box. We're talking about the kinds of everyday lessons that some families may not think to teach, the kinds of everyday lessons that some schools may not have the time, or for that matter, the funding to cover. Things like attending public meetings, things like writing to local leaders, or simply learning how city government works. These aren't just warm-up drills for adulthood, they're the building blocks for a lifelong engagement. That's why today I'm honored to welcome our next guest. She is a public servant whose leadership has literally reshaped local education. As school board president, she engineered the first successful bond campaign in decades, funding for new elementary schools and modernizing 2 middle schools, and now in the state senate, she champions early learning and K-12 education statewide. But before we introduce our guest, I wanted to take a moment to speak directly to you, our home viewers. Today's conversation is with an individual who, like some of our previous guests, is currently running for public office. In accordance with the fairness guidelines established by BCAT and the Federal Communications Commission, we are prohibited from discussing any ongoing political campaigns or related election content during this interview. This appearance should not be interpreted as an endorsement of the guest's candidacy. Afternoons with Ash does not use its platform to publicly endorse political campaigns, candidates, or partisan initiatives. Our focus is education, civic empowerment, and the core values of leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly honored to introduce my next guest. She is a former school board president, a longtime advocate for education equality, and a champion of public health and community well-being. Her career reflects a commitment to understand populations and to create an inclusive policy that reaches across both cultural and generational lines. She currently serves as Washington State Senator for the 26th Legislative District. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Senator Deborah Krishnadasan. Senator.
Hi, Ash. Thanks for having me. This is fantastic. So love the conversation. Let's go. All right.
So before we got into today's conversation, I did want to illuminate my guests to how we first met, which was a annual dinner that's held for the 23rd LD, and it was held this year in Kitsap County, and I was fortunate enough to come out and photograph the event, and I met you there, standing at the raffle table. You were making sure everything looked nice. You were away from the crowd, and when I was introduced to you, it was not Senator Deb. This is Deb, you know, and I sat there and we talked for a few minutes, and other folks came up and shook your hand, and you know, it really took a little while for the conversation to proceed before I even found out that you were currently a senator or running for office, and it meant a lot to me to see a person standing there at that table. You weren't concerned about your title. You were concerned about just getting to know everybody, and that's how we got to know each other. And so, thank you so much.
Thank you. I remember that conversation and meeting you. And I was there as a guest, but I had a history in doing kind of fundraising events, and saw that I could help a little bit there. So it was fun to kind of be a part of it and a part of the success, and then meet so many new people there.
Today's conversation is about, inspiring kids. But before we got into it, I think maybe some of our viewers are curious about what inspires someone in the first place, like yourself, to get involved in public service. So I was curious if you could share a moment from your youth, or maybe your early adulthood, that shaped your path into leadership.
Lots of different examples of leadership throughout my childhood, but really the one that shaped kind of who I am and the leader I am today was my first job out of college. I worked for Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. I chose to do grassroots type events where I was working directly with the families that had children that were impacted by the disease, and got to know them. It was about those that early on relationship building, and that taught me and really instilled in me a passion for serving other people, and that has stuck with me throughout all of the things that I've done in life. Is I am there to help other people. I also realized during that work and the work that had followed in the years is I had an ability to bring people together, make people feel welcome, make people feel that they can make a difference, and bringing those people together and getting results. You talked about the school bond earlier. We hadn't passed one in decades. The ability that we got it at 67%, that meant we brought a community together from all sides to deliver on that. So that early on experience at Cystic Fibrosis Foundation really helped me become the leader I am today, and continues to.
When I spoke in the lead up about what generations of folks have heard in their households, as I'm writing it, I can't help but hear my father's own voice in the back of my head. Benjamin, it's going to be my way until the highway, or you're not going to be able to do this until you're old enough to vote, and that's when you'll get a say in the world. And I think a lot of kids are hearing that instead of ways that they can be empowered. Today's conversation obviously centers around that, empowering youth with these tools of democracy long before they can vote. Do you remember your first experience with civic engagement?
I think I'll just reflect back onto my senior year in high school. I had a civics class. Glad that we have civics education in our schools, or curriculum in our schools. And every day we had to take a kind of current events a test or quiz. And back then, I'm dating myself here, didn't have phones to go through. We got the newspaper and read what was going on in the world, how government decisions were impacting people, what that meant for our future. And so, of course, I wanted to do well on the quizzes, so reading the newspaper every day, or sitting in front of the big square box in our living room that had 5 channels and maybe 2 news sources, but getting engaged and understanding what was happening in the world. And getting that grade, but it became really much more meaningful than that. I realized that the things that are happening in our world, the decisions our government is making, impacts our people, impacts our world. I think about, again, dating myself here, think about the back in that day, the Challenger explosion and the distrust of government and the space program at that time because of that incident. But again, it became more about getting engaged and understanding our world more than the test that I was taking. So that was kind of my first time. But
you have children.
Yes.
What kind of things are they concerned about? And around what age do you start seeing an opinion when it comes to the world around them?
That varies. In our household, I always found it important to get them involved in when we got a voter pamphlet. We would go through it together and we would talk about the candidates. We'd talk about the issues.
Yeah.
They watched me vote, and I think that was a great example of that their civic duty is to be an educated voter when voting. So that was important. I think with a lot of things today, children are reflective of what their parents' political views are. And I can understand that, but I always encourage my kids to form their own opinion. Before I would tell them mine, I would ask them theirs and why, and having those discussions versus me just delivering like, this is our family's view. Making them and empowering them to have their own opinion.
Yeah. How can people have a meaningful impact in their communities when they're young people, when they haven't had an opportunity to get out and vote for their leadership? Do you have advice for?
Getting involved, giving back to your community, I think is really important. When I had children, I stopped working in my career and focused on raising my children and volunteering in our schools. And my husband found that was very important example to show our kids that giving back to your community is important. That I think helps kids a lot to see that they can go out and do something and make an impact and make a difference.
Yeah.
So volunteering, one of the things I stood up with a student in Peninsula School District was a varsity letter for community service.
Okay.
And so I think last year they had 200 students in the Peninsula School District get more than 100 hours each per year during the school year of community service. And I think that's great. You know, a lot more kids are getting involved. One thing I encourage kids to do is, yes, in that program it was important to get the hours, but maybe focus on an area or a passion and get really involved in that so that you can actually see the impact that you can have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, when I'm working with the kids, you know, often I hear about things like, you know, you can still write your senator. You can write your leaders. You can create programs, you know, like you said, that are based on community service, whether it be something like cleaning up trash around the community or, you know, doing something for senior citizens. You know, we see a lot of kids getting involved with things like that, but not really understanding that that's a way for them to do meaningful work, you know.
Yeah.
You yourself have a long history of working with kids in schools. You've been a strong voice for early learning and K-12 investment. Tell me, why do you believe that these areas are so critical, not just for students, but for communities?
Yeah. I love the saying that great schools make great communities make great schools. And I really do believe that. A strong educational system in a community can be so beneficial. Families move to communities because of schools, because of the strength of the school district.
Right.
Families move there, businesses move there. So the economic development of a community sometimes relies on how strong the schools are. So in terms of why education, a strong education program is important for kids, early learning is so critical. We're reaching those kids at that 3 to 5 years of age, and those learning years are so important. Some of the things we're seeing in our schools right now, especially in our elementary years, is some kids in that 3 to 5 years weren't in school because of COVID.
Yeah. And
they didn't have like how to be engaged with other friends and how to be in a classroom. And those critical years of not being able to have that has impacted our education. So investing in early learning is so important. It also helps kids that potentially, so sometimes you'll see a child that through K through 12 will be on an IEP or an individual education plan where they need services specialized for them. many times with intervention and with identifying things early on in that 3 to 5, you won't see that need for a plan through K through 12. You catch it early.
Yeah.
And so again, early education, and then a strong K through 12 program that not only prepares kids for the rigor, for the things they need to learn, to reading, writing, arithmetic, but really looking at pathways for kids, different opportunities. Not every child is going to go to college. We want to show them that there's that opportunity there, but to also open up other doors for them so that they can pursue other things outside of high school and different pathways. That gets kids engaged during high school, during middle school, which I think is another challenge that we're having right now. Kids are so tied to their phones and tied to things like, how do we get kids engaged? Well, have classes and programs that are exciting to them. One of the things that was just stood up in Peninsula School District was the aviation program. A lot of our kids were graduating and going in to become pilots. So getting them engaged earlier, or introducing it to them earlier before they even went off after college or after high school, was really important.
Yeah.
So things like that are important. I think that the why K-12 and early education is so important for
I've got to say, I've read about the aviation program and I'm really impressed. It's always been a dream of mine to fly, and to think that, these kids are able to get that type of learning at such a young point in their lives is just incredible, especially for an area like ours.
Yeah.
A lot of folks that I speak to, and we've spoken to a lot of folks this year that are involved in politics. I think a lot of them ask themselves all the time, why did I do this? How did I get involved in this? And I think there's a point early in our lives where that light shines on us and we realize that there's something that we can do. I was curious, if we could step back into your mind a little bit. What would you say to young Deb Krishnadasan, or if you were speaking to a student tomorrow, if you were in one of our classes teaching kids about how they could become leaders, what would you say to that person that doesn't yet see themselves in government, but clearly could see themselves there? I think all children have the opportunity to be wherever they want to be in life. To that young child who says, Deb, I want to be a senator like you, what would you say to them?
What would I say to them? I would encourage them to get involved early so that they can start developing their passions and where they want to serve. So whether it be off on a senator or a school board or city council. So getting involved early, like you had said, going to those meetings, I think is important. One of the things I didn't mention earlier, Ash, was the encouragement of getting kids involved in the legislative process. I tell you, the most impactful committee meetings we have down in Olympia are when kids come and testify, students come and testify. That makes us pause, makes us really, the issue becomes very real when you see coming from a student. So I want young kids looking at getting into maybe a governmental role, so knowing that their voice really matters and what they bring to the table is important and impactful. One of the biggest things I think I've learned over the last year is you don't have to know it all, and you won't know it all. People want to have leaders that are relatable, that they can have a conversation with, and that they know that they're being heard, and they have good dialogue. Those are the types of leaders that I want to have in my life, and that's the leader that I want to be and continue to be. And so a fear of like, oh my gosh, I don't know it all, don't let that hold you back. Like, jump into it, get involved, and follow your passion. And I think that'll lead you to where you want to be in government or wherever.
Well said, thank you. Senator, we only have a few moments left. So I did want to ask you a final question, but also, if you could, when you answer this, please let my audience know where they can learn more about you in the future. But I was curious, looking ahead, what do you hope that your legacy will be, not just as a senator, but as a mentor and a model for this next generation?
My legacy. I think about what I've taught my kids. Be true to yourself. Care for other people. Be there for other people. Lift other people up. Be a leader, not always leading from the front. Sometimes you got to take a step back and let others, empower others to step up. I think that's really important. I don't really want my legacy to be about me. I want it to be a world that I leave behind that has opened the doors up for young adults to feel empowered and that they feel they have a voice and a place where they can be themselves and make an impact on their world. That's what I hope I am creating and contributing to in our world.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ash.
For those who might be interested in checking out information about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my legislative email, which I will be able to respond to, is deborah.krishnadasan@leg.wa.gov. So I don't know if we can, that's a long one, so I don't know how you're going to do that. I guess that's the best way to do it at this point.
Well, thank you so much for being on
Ash,
the show
thank
today.
you so much. Great. Thank you.
As always, I want to thank you for joining me today. While our guest holds public office and is, at this time, also a candidate, I wanted to remind our viewers once again that Afternoons with Ash does not endorse any campaign, party, or political figure. What we do support and will continue to champion is the power of education, mentorship, and early civic engagement. Whether you're a parent, an educator, or just someone who remembers what it felt like to be told that you had to wait your turn, I hope today's conversation serves as a reminder that leadership is not defined by age and that democracy doesn't begin with a ballot. It begins with belief. Belief in yourself, belief in your neighbors, and belief that your voice, no matter how small it may feel, can still echo in the halls of power. Until next time, I'm Ash Black, and you are watching Afternoons with Ash. Washington State, stay curious, stay courageous, and stay involved.
You can find all of our episodes on our YouTube channel and catch the live broadcasts on BCAT, as well as all the extras at Afternoons with Ash Black on Facebook.